Well, of course, the developments in the Northwest have dominated the news cycle throughout the day. It was just, 24 hours ago that Supra Mahumapelo said on this show that by midday today he would no longer be the Premier of the Northwest. Well, he still is officially, but he has now appointed an acting replacement. We're joined now for some analysis and some general commentary about what's happening in the South African political landscape by my arch nemesis, Stephen Grootes. As always, a pleasure to have you on the show.
Bongani, thank you.
High drama in the Northwest. As I said on this show last night, the Premier declared to the entire country he would be gone by midday today. He's still there.
Yeah, very much so. We played that sound on SAFM this morning. Thank you. I thought it was very important. And a staggering thing that he said, politics is a bit like poker. If you blink for a second, people know that you're weak. And he blinked last night.
In fact, before we even do that, for those who might have missed it, here is a visual of that moment that we are referring to.
By tomorrow, midday, Supra over again, Ramoeleti Mahumapelo will be the former Premier of the Northwest.
I mean, Stephen, he couldn't have been more clear.
No, he couldn't. And I mean, I think Aldrin Sampear did an incredible job in getting that sound out of him. But once you've blinked in politics, that's usually it. And there have been instances, and I'm talking generally around the world, where someone might blink in this way. They'll say, I'm going, hold on for a little bit longer, but eventually go. Because that blink is so important that people out to get you, and I think Supra Mahumapelo has plenty of those, are suddenly emboldened. And it's tempting to see this through the prism of President Cyril Ramaphosa versus Mahumapelo. I don't think that's quite correct. All of the reporting we've seen suggests that the top 6 officials of the ANC, or 6 of them, no matter where they've stood on previous issues, have said that he must go. The government task team, Business Day reported this morning that the government task team once says that the entire Northwest province must be taken under national administration by cabinet. That's chaired by Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the minister in the presidency. All of these things suggest, as far as the ANC is concerned on a national level, Mahumapelo, the forces ranged against him are simply too strong.
So why this pushback, this belated pushback? Because, of course, technically there's a particular process that must be followed in removing a premier. He would need a simple majority of the legislature to remove him. If he's got the numbers in that body, does it matter what Luthuli House says?
Yeah, I think it does for several reasons. I mean, the first thing is that the National Executive Committee has always had the power to appoint premiers and to remove them in the end, because the NEC simply cannot allow a rebellion by a province. Then the province almost ceases to be ANC. What is it? And this leads to all sorts of other problems. You know, in Gauteng for a long time, you had a situation where the person who was the premier was Nomvula Mokanyane, and she was appointed by the NEC. She actually ran in an ANC internal election in Gauteng and lost to Paul Mashatile, who was not able to become premier because he simply couldn't convince the NEC that he needed to become premier. The NEC would want to stamp its authority on this. And bear in mind, the other thing, and it's your poll question tonight, Bongani, is how much damage is this doing to the ANC in the Northwest? Imagine for a moment the prospect of the ANC winning all of the provinces except for the Western Cape and the Northwest, or losing 3 provinces in an election. You'd lose the Western Cape, you'd lose Gauteng and Northwest. All of those things, what I would say is align the interests of the NEC members in removing Mahumapelo, no matter where they stand on Ramaphosa.
It does raise the interesting issue of intra-party processes in terms of dealing with leaders who simply refuse to obey the instructions of headquarters.
Yes, you know, you sort of wonder if Musi Maimane and Ramaphosa are starting a WhatsApp group at the moment. I think it does, and I think this shows you that for political parties to survive in South Africa and to survive and grow structures that will endure, they need to have really clear processes to do this. And you need to have bodies that can do this, but they have to be political as well. So the Democratic Alliance will refer to its Federal Executive Council, the ANC will refer to its NEC, and those really do rely on balance of power forces. And Patricia de Lille has fallen foul of the ones in the DA. I do think if push came to shove, Mahumapelo would fall foul of the ones in the ANC. I don't think we've seen a province, a provincial executive committee, come out, as they did this afternoon, and defy Luthuli House in this way. I can't think of an instance where that's happened. So I wasn't surprised at all that so quickly there was suddenly, no, he's going to take leave of absence, and we're going to have Wendy Nelson as the actual Premier in the meantime. It's a very interesting moment.
Well, you've raised what's going on in the DA as well. Patricia de Lille saying, in fact, showing up at events today saying she is still mayor. We know, of course, the IEC hasn't noted the vacancy in the mayor's office precisely because there's court action around whether or not she can be removed for the reasons that the DA has spelled out. Where does that leave things in Cape Town?
Yeah, messy and waterless to a large extent. I think
it's a dry white season. Shall we go on
for the DA? I think what that really means is a little bit of chaos. You know, it's also easy and quick to say this will cost the ANC votes in the Northwest and the DA in the city of Cape Town. Both of these parties, though, have what I would call core voters. They have rich pools of voters who will vote for them almost no matter what. They both have the ability to almost impose a new leader who comes with legitimacy. Some would say the ANC is doing that nationally now. Some would disagree with that. But what that means is they can almost rebrand themselves in the year they have left before the election next year, but they have to move quickly. The real problem in the Northwest for the ANC on that point is who can do it, because the ANC in the Northwest has been divided almost for 10 years. 2008, police broke up the conference at Sun City. In 2008, we're talking a long period of division, shots fired at the provincial secretary just ahead of the Mangaung conference in 2012. This is serious stuff. And so Supra Mahumapelo may go, but who replaces him in the longer term is difficult, because if you've got a provincial executive committee that's defied Luthuli House, almost automatically you don't want to pick an MEC that's a member of that as well.
So where does this leave the two principals of South Africa's leading parties, Mmusi Maimane and the president? You're saying they might be in the same WhatsApp group. Mmusi Maimane in particular was very ready to step into the water crisis in the city of Cape Town. He's been quite quiet on this issue as far as Patricia de Lille is concerned, certainly in recent days. We saw President Ramaphosa leaving London, that Commonwealth heads of government, to try and deal with the crisis in the Northwest. That was weeks ago. Where does this leave those two individuals at the moment?
I think they both want to try and stamp their authority on the party. That's probably easier for Mmusi Maimane than it is for President Ramaphosa. I think that they both are also hoping and praying that this ends quickly. I think they're both going to have a long, hard look at their party's constitutions to make it easier next time around. Watch. And there'll be subtle changes adopted at a conference somewhere that no one will see, and suddenly it will become important. I think, though, that in both cases, long, hard work is needed to try and resolve whatever personality clashes, conflicts, policy disagreements. And perhaps in the case of Mahumapelo, some of his critics would say there's an entrenched corruption there, and that is the real cause of this. You know, you had people coming in and sort of, in inverted commas, storming the Provincial Executive Committee meeting today, his supporters. And it really reminded me of Brian Molefe's grand return to Eskom last year, greeted by hundreds of workers. Within 2 weeks, he was gone. It almost doesn't mean anything because it was organized, but where's the money for that coming from? Those are some of the things they need to look at. And it's about entrenching leaders who you know will actually act in the best interests of whichever party. And that's one of the problems that both parties are dealing with right now.
I mean, I tweeted earlier that you blink and the story has changed. On the other hand, are we all making a bit of a storm in a teacup? I mean, in a dynamic political environment, factions are going to be the order of the day. Is this the maturing of our politics, if you like?
To an extent, sure. You know, there are lots of things that we haven't seen before, and there's still many things we haven't seen before that will still happen. And we're right to pay them so much attention, because how they happened and how they're dealt with now sets a precedent. And that's why it's important. It sets a precedent for the NEC, for the ANC. You know, the first premier that backed the authority, not the province this time, but the premier who backed the authority of Luthuli House was Masiwa Lekota, if I remember properly,
yes,
in the Free State a long time ago. And he won a court case against the ANC. They got him out in the end. And so much has happened since then. So all of these things are important because they show us the way forward. They also reveal, and isn't it revealing? It's far more revealing how the ANC and the DA deal with their internal tensions. It's far more revealing to voters sometimes than what they actually say on the campaign trail. So you can look at the DA and say, have you treated Patricia de Lille fairly? And you can look at the ANC and say, have you treated Premier Mahumapelo fairly? And you can see how they might treat you, the voter.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. What do they say? A week is a long time in politics. I think in this climate, in this environment, a day might be too long. That's political analysis from Stephen Grootes. Stay with us.